Councilwoman Wansley, what is interesting about this latest shooting, this murder of Nurse Alex Pretti, is that frankly, what it has done, it has um, awakened white folks around this country. For the last year, several friends of mine have said, what is it going to take for America to wake up and see what's happening with Donald Trump and MAGA? And I said, it won't be the attack on black people. It won't be the attack on Latinos. It's going to be the attack on white folks. And the shooting death of Robin Good, now Alex Pretti, all of a sudden you got conservatives saying ICE needs to change their tactics. Texas Governor Greg Abbott. You got Fox News, Kurt Gowdy, former congressman, saying, wait a minute, this guy wasn't a threat. What do you mean you can't have a concealed weapon and a permit to carry it going to a protest? So it's interesting how the tone is now shifting as a result of what took place.
Yeah, and I would say actually it's the overall resistance movement that we're seeing play out in Minnesota, where there's a huge multiracial component of it, but it's also no, lie. Minnesota is a predominantly white state. Minneapolis is predominantly white. And what we saw on Friday were over 50,000 residents here across the Twin Cities, across the state. Also, we had tons of people come into our state for solidarity actions. And we're talking about ordinary people, union members, educators, nurses, which is what Alex Pretti was, all come in and say, Trump, you do not get to have the final say on justice, on liberation. And we do not agree nor accept your campaign of cruelty that is being waged by these domestic terrorists that are ICE agents. And I think that actually was the signaling there of like, wait, we have not seen something of this magnitude towards the Trump administration since the start of his term. And to see that it's also being joined by the likes of folks like Alex Pretti. It's like you name, it's working class white folks and also former veterans. He was a veteran and also a VA nurse, and who spent his time also serving his country and being killed by another federal agent, while just simply observing and saying what you're doing is absolutely unacceptable in our streets, and doing that just with his camera. It says a lot. And I think the Trump administration is recognizing that they are not winning the public narrative on this. They're not winning public support. And this is not a good look to be out here just killing and shooting civilians at their discretion. And I think this is why we're seeing this opening with the Trump administration walking back some of the threats that they were very forceful of. But it's largely because working class people, ordinary people in the Twin Cities have been on the front lines of defense since Operation Metro Surge started several weeks ago, and made it very clear, you don't get to do this. You don't come into our communities and harm our people without consequence.
The reason I asked the question that way is because whether folks want to deal with it or not, America is still a majority white country. When you look at this election, and I've been laying this thing out when I laid out my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds. I actually said in the book that, listen, black people, we knew who Donald Trump was back in 2011, long before that. We knew who he was in 2016. We ain't vote for him then. We ain't vote for him in 2020. Didn't vote for him in 2024. That's why we use the phrase, hashtag, we tried to tell you. We got shirts on our site saying, don't blame me, I voted for the black woman. And this is a moment where and we just have to confront it, that when it all of a sudden impacts folk who don't look like you and I, the conversation changes. We talk about how America responded to the crack cocaine compared to how they responded to the opioid campaign. And I have no problem with the fact that you are seeing white consciousness rise up. People have been complaining, look at these protests. Where are all the black people? It's kind of like, why don't you focus on people who are actually showing up? And the tide has to shift. And people have to be shaken out of their doldrums and recognize. And Minneapolis, Minnesota is ground zero, but it is causing folk across the country to say, hey, I might need to reconsider my support of this because, frankly, this has gone too far. This is too much.
Absolutely. And that's why I believe Minneapolis plays a really special role in advancing what you mentioned, just consciousness, or revelations amongst the general population, or also agitating people and radicalizing them. Because as you highlighted, just we were in this position 6 years ago with the murder of George Floyd. And we saw the world turn to us in terms of how do we forge a pathway forward around policing and public safety, because cops stole another Black life in that moment. And for years, Black Lives Matter had been organizing protests and things of that nature here in Minnesota, all across the country, saying policing is racist and it's violence. Law enforcement in general, focus is oppressing Black, brown, poor people. It's not often meant to protect and serve as its quote unquote, its PR campaign says. And the shooting of killing of George Floyd would birth one of the largest civil rights or social uprising in U.S. history in terms of movement organizing. And we saw in that moment, again, Minneapolis be ground zero for showing whether it's issues related to white supremacy, policing, immigration. We're not the ones to be played with. Like, yes, we have our issues, but we show that, okay, there's a shared sense of commitment for advancing justice, for saying that we care about the collective well-being of one another. We care about the preservation of democracy in our society, in our country. And we recognize that if it's George Floyd to Renee Good to Alex Petrie, we know these institutions will use George Floyd, a Black person or a Somali person, to advance what is very much a corrupt agenda. And the Trump's agenda is really to make the rich richer. And they use these things. Black people, oh, those are the people you should be scared of. Somali people, no, they're doing fraud. Be afraid of them. Oh, these illegal immigrants. No, those are the problems. Those are the people who are taking your jobs and making it so that you don't have health care all of a sudden. It's to distract us from recognizing that it's the wealthiest of our society that should be the common enemy. And they have us looking at one another and trying to create confusion to make it seem like we're the problem. And Minneapolis, I think, under this test by the Trump administration's actually pointing a mirror and saying, no, we know what you're doing, and we're not going to capitulate to this. We see the schemes that you're using around racism, around fascism. We are not going to stand for it. And we're going to set a new model, what it looks like to take on this administration. And to have white folks at the forefront of it, I think is important. It's important to show that as white people, you have the responsibility to take up a bulk of this weight in this fight. And knowing that it's coming on the heels of other communities, Black folks, immigrants who've been on the front lines of taking on these very deadly and violent institutions by themselves for a long time. So it's great to see that it's being leveled up, and that hopefully it's a playbook for other cities where Trump looks to enter into and also take control and show that you have options to fight back.
And not only that, it is also showing the hypocrisy, because it's quite interesting to watch, again, Trey Gowdy's of the world, the Fox News, talking about this was a rightful gun owner who had a permit. So did Philando Castile.
Yep.
And they were mighty quiet when he was shot and killed.
Yep. You're absolutely right. And these are the things that we're recognizing locally. In fact, I mean, just a couple of days ago, one of our local civil rights leader who was on the front lines of Philando Castile, of Jamar Clark, of all the many people we lost at the hands of law enforcement, our local militarized, enforcement agency, Nakima Levy Armstrong, she was prosecuted and arrested. Charges are still being pending because she has always called to question around how serious do we take the valuing of Black lives in our communities and in our cities, especially when it comes to policing. And that was the case with Philando Castile. We have video footage that blatantly showed this man was killed in his car. He was a rightful gun owner. He even disclosed that in the contact with the officer who pulled them over. And we saw that officer still shoot him multiple times, kill him in front of what at the time was his fiance and his daughter. And then get acquitted. So we're seeing a lot of parallels, and I think on the ground, what has been really inspiring to see is all the skill sets as someone who was a Black Lives or was on the ground as a Black Lives Matter organizer, like all the skills from observing, documenting, how to actually go about, building a movement to get a law enforcement agent held accountable. We didn't see that happen until Minneapolis in 2020 following George Floyd's murder. It took a national and international movement that was birthed here to get Derek Chauvin and the other officers locked up and prosecuted. So we're seeing a lot of parallels of the movement to demand a new model around immigration, to take on the Trump administration. It's absolutely taking from the struggles that we led on the ground in response to preserving Black lives here, and also calling for justice for the ones who were stolen at the hands of law enforcement.
Well, this is why I have consistently said since the inauguration, this is not a moment to be silent, not a moment to be quiet. We can't be afraid to take to the streets. We can't be afraid to raise our voices. We must stand in constant protest. I said on MLK Day, I don't want to hear that crap about day of service. No, if MLK was alive, he would be leading protests. He would be leading marches. He would be organizing and mobilizing. And what we also need, this is the final point for you that you can speak on. We also need folks to understand that marching and protesting against ICE in January is critical. We also got to march to the polls in November to oppose the people who want to fund them, who want to support them, who continue to make excuses and stand with Donald Trump and MAGA. They must be penalized at the ballot box.
Yes. I think, of course, we've heard electorally, we need to be looking at the midterms elections as an opportunity to flip who represents us and who is whoever is out here supporting Trump's campaign of cruelty and racist violence that's impacting everyone. You should absolutely be motivated to get those people out. But I also would say it's important to hold elected officials, people who currently have positions of power and who may or may not be seeking re-election come the midterms. It's so important to hold them accountable in the current moment. Right now, we could eliminate funding for this agency that is the domestic terrorist agency of ICE. And here in Minnesota, we're calling on Senator Amy Klobuchar as well as Senator Tina Smith to do everything that they can, if it even includes filibustering, to make sure not one more dime goes to this agency that's already overfunded and is not helping our communities. It also looks like holding accountable our current governor. Governor Walz has the ability to declare a state of emergency and put an eviction moratorium in place, because there are thousands of people who are about to be at risk of getting evicted and put on the streets, and thus put more in contact with ICE agents to then either be abducted or shot or killed or worse. And we have the ability to protect those residents right now if Governor Walz exhibits the courage to do so and allow people to shelter in place. It looks like state officials holding the federal ICE agents responsible for shooting and killing Renee Good and Alex Pretti accountable. And that looks like arresting them, prosecuting them. I get ongoing investigations must happen, but there is a bulk of evidence right now that should be used as a baseline to at least detain these agents who robbed our communities of beloved community members who literally were helping care and protect one another.
Absolutely. Councilwoman Wansley, keep up the fight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot. Take care.